Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name is Regina Geisina. I'm one of the co-founders of Collaborative WIM. What a pleasure it is for us to host this meeting tonight. Folks are joining from all over the world, from San Diego to India to Serbia to LA and Chicago. So many familiar faces, and to those of you who are new to our events, welcome. First and foremost, I wanted to give huge thank you to our host, CFA Society Orlando, and we have Christina Scheffer with us tonight, and would love for her to say a few words on behalf of our hosts.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm Christina Schaefer with CFA Society Orlando. I sit on the board and I'm actually overseeing our new women initiative with our society specifically. So we've benefited greatly from being able to plug in to Collaborative WIM and kicking that off and just picking everyone's brain on what they've seen, what they've done in their own respective societies. So we're really grateful for that. I also wanted to just say thank you to the leaders of the group for continuing to organize such excellent content, including lining up great speakers like the one we have today. I know I've personally been inspired by this group and leaned on this group for different things, from learning more about what other people do outside of the bubble of the industry that I work in, and even just career coaches. So without further ado, I wanted to say that we're happy to be the host of today's session that's specifically on how to shift from being burned out to fully charged. So we can't thank you all enough for joining us, and for the host, for our guest speaker, giving up her time and dedicating her time to our initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Folks, please do feel free to use the chat box as we chat with our author. Feel free to pop in questions and we'll cover them. Whatever we don't cover during the session, we'll have some time for a Q&A later on. But without further ado, I wanted to introduce our special guest speaker tonight, Dr. Neha Sangwan. She's the CEO and founder of Intuitive Intelligence, is an internal medicine physician, international speaker, and corporate communication expert. Her private practice and corporate consulting focuses on empowering individuals, organizational leaders, and their teams with the tools for clear and effective communication. And today we're welcoming Neha to discuss her book. So Neha, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight.
It's an honor to be with you. Excited to hear what's on people's hearts and minds, and how we can help them have a net gain of energy.
Well, it's the beginning of the year, and despite of the fact that, I know many folks have already given up on their New Year's resolutions, we still keep going strong. So if we haven't burned out yet, sometimes we keep powering strong, and that's why we have you here to give us those tools so we can be more efficient and effective and use our energy where it really needs to go. But I know for some folks who might not be familiar with your work, I wanted to give you a chance to give us a little bit of an overview. What really inspired you to write the book, your personal story, why burnout, why this book?
Yeah, well, all right, I'm gonna pull up a slide or two then. And so let me give you a bit of that. It'll make it a little more interesting than just me talking. So the book that we're speaking about is powered by me. It's From Burned Out to Fully Charged at Work and in Life. It's true. I am a mechanical engineer. I'm an internal medicine physician. I'm an executive coach, and I teach companies about conscious capitalism. All of that just means I'm a really good Indian child, right? Engineering, medicine, I'm going to do it all. And what it has really given me is a unique perspective at the intersection of disciplines people don't even think go together. So why would an engineer be a doctor, be an executive coach? Like, why would that all go together? And I think I think that's what helps me help you solve challenging problems like burnout. There's a lot of research and things that have been going on for decades, and we just kind of track how burnout keeps rising in healthcare and other places. But the real question is, how do we practically do something about it? How do you uniquely come in? You don't even have to be burned out. I want you to take a look at this in the back here. It's really about anywhere, being on the spectrum, anywhere from feeling burned out to fully charged. So wherever you are right now, it's whether you have a net gain or a net drain of energy on a physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual level. So how did I get here? Well, it sounds a little bit like this. Literally, one day I walked in the hospital, and about 5 hours into my shift, I leaned over and I was like, "Hey, Nina, could you get 40 milliequivalents of IV potassium to the gentleman in 636?" And I'll never forget the look on her face. She looked at me and said, "Dr. Sangwan, are you okay?" And it was my first indication that I actually might not be. And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "That's the fourth time in under 5 minutes you've asked me that same question, and I've answered you every time." That was how I was introduced to burnout. That was 2004, June of 2004. It's been more than 20 years. And what I realized in that moment was we have very limited ways that we can help people. EAP or your doctor will basically, give you this. They'll give you some form of time off. They will, let me see if I can pull it and give it to you because it's easier when you see it. Yeah, here it is. So this is the prescription people get when they're stressed or feeling exhausted, or, you go see a typical provider. We're going to give you some time off, maybe 10 days, maybe a month off. We can give you the power of the pen where you still get paid if you're at an institution. Then we give you some combination of antidepressant, sleep medication, or anti-anxiety, depending on the context with which you present. And if I'm a really progressive provider, I'll tell you to do some stress management or go out in nature or do some yoga. The problem here is that a month later or 10 days later, you go back in the ring for round two and you don't know what got you there or what to do differently. So there's not a real great return rate on somebody. They usually quit their job. They usually shift into another position. They usually are trying to use the same coping mechanisms again, because all they've had is a pause, but they don't actually understand how to have different behavior. So I've committed 20 years ago, I committed to filling in the blanks, to saying if the medical world can give you a short, acute short-term answer, but then leaves you without the answer of how do I change this? My job is to figure out how we can create a way that people can figure out, do a pulse check, figure out where they are, figure out how it's unique to them, where they're having a net gain and a net drain of energy, and then give them powerful, practical tools to heal.
So I'm sure for a lot of us, we're like, a face mask and a couple glasses of wine, and I'm ready to power through, the next day. In your experience, working with patients, clients, in your practical application, like what are some of the biggest myths about burnout that folks have? And, what have you heard that you typically say, here is the opposite, because it is counterintuitive to our nature in some way, potentially.
They think it's simple. So they'll say like, it's my fault. I burned out. It must be my fault. No. Then people say, well, you know what it is? It's my employer's fault. Okay. Or they'll say, it's the world. The world's moving too fast. It's the world's fault. Right. And what I would say, I'll throw up another a slide here that'll probably help us get there a little quicker. Hold on. Is I think one of the big myths is that this is like somehow really simple and easy and they understand how it works. But what I'd say is, as an engineer, one thing I've learned about getting to the root cause of what's happening and meeting complex issues at their root means we have to take an expanded perspective. So I call it triple vision. We have to think about the things how we're showing up. Yeah, of course we do. We also need to think about the environment in which we're working, right? The we, so it's me, we world. And we have to think about the more global stressors that are going on. And when we need to adapt to the world that we're living in, we often decide to create some coping mechanisms, ways to get us over the deadline, through the tension, the stress, whatever it is we're dealing with. And when we do that, sometimes it works short term, but then it drains us longer term. And so what I'd say is, people think, I was fine on Monday and then I was burned out on Friday. That's not how burnout works. You have such a sophisticated machinery inside you. You are far more sophisticated right now than generative AI, but it's catching up quick. You are far more sophisticated than the fanciest tool, technology or car, right? And you rely on feedback loops to give you information. And I think another myth that I'd say here, boy, when I can't exit out and stay on your screen. So that's okay. I'm just gonna show you guys here a little bit, which is, so error messages are how any fancy technology works. And the human body is the fanciest of technologies. So what's your check engine light equivalent to a car or an error message on a screen? It's your body map. Your own check engine light is how your body tells you. So your body's talking. The question is, are you listening? We've gotten so good at focusing outside of ourselves that we've lost the balance of having an inward focus as we go about our world. So your check engine light is your unique way that your body talks to you. And I think people they aren't even aware of it. They think it's all out there. And when you check into your own body, what I mean by that is, there's things each of you do that is in your comfort zone. Okay. So put that in the chat. Write some things that are in your comfort zone. You kind of do them automatically. You don't even think, you're on autopilot. You do it and you don't even think about it. It might even be your commute to work. It might be, how you get the family ready in the morning. It might be, how you jump on with your team. I don't know what it is, but you want to write down what's in your comfort zone. Then what you do is you step outside that and you say, oh, when I get outside my comfort zone, like if I were to call on you right now and you didn't know that was happening, might that be outside your comfort zone? I'd call that your learning zone. How would you know you got out of your comfort zone? Well, your body map would tell you in a unique way. So Lauren, would you mind unmuting for a moment? Lauren supports me in my company. And I'd just like to ask you, I just called on you, that's not in your comfort zone, okay? So tell me, what's going on in your body right now? What's happening for your body map?
Sure. So I would say my heart just started pitter-pattering a little bit more.
Okay.
And when I get very nervous, I would say my face gets a little bit flushed. And really nervous, I would say voice gets a little shaky as well.
Okay, so what I want you to know, thank you, Lauren. What I want you to know is, for me, it's different. I get throat constriction and I get stomach turning. The real question is, what is it for you? Because everyone has a unique way that this happens. And I think people think that burnout, this is the myth. They think that there's it's like a series of steps that happens and I can, where's the answer here? How do we solve this? And I think what I'd say is, the most important thing is that you expand your perspective to see like a me, we world, to know that it's paying attention to how your body gives you signals in a unique way while you are busy focused on the outside world.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we just completely tune out of our bodies, and your book, really talks about energy and finance professionals. I mean, we work with money. Money is energy. Sometimes it's positive energy, sometimes it's negative energy, and the burnout happens really quickly. And sometimes we see even in our clients that they're stressing about money. I mean, money is generally a very sensitive topic for folks. Like, do you have any insights on that? Any thoughts? I mean, when for folks who work with money and that energy, mental energy, spiritual energy, any practical tips or tricks, or maybe break it down a little for us?
All right, well, this is a big one. And people have asked me, why did you write a book on burnout and not include financial energy as one of the big topics? And it's because money, first of all, okay, I think of money like technology, like capitalism. I think of it as it's not really good or bad in my mind or heart. It's a tool, and it depends on the consciousness of the user, right? So it's a tool that we get to use. You're right, it's a flow of energy. The reason I didn't put financial energy into the book, even though 70% of people in the US, regardless of socioeconomic status, will report that their financial world is the greatest source of their stress. And it's because your relationship to money and your client's relationship to money is complicated. Physically, right? How much literally is the number, right? What is the number that you think will make it all okay? By when, right? Then there is, how does financial stress physically show up in your body map that I just showed you? When you're stressed about it, what does it sound like when all of a sudden this is dropping below, or the stock market changes, or the investment you thought was going to happen? It shows up physically in your body as well as a physical number. Okay, let's go to the next level. Mentally, any of you that have tried to convince a client to do something that you just can't get them to be convinced about, you realize that mentally and emotionally, boy, money's got some strings being pulled that you can't see. That usually goes back to your beliefs about money, your money history, the way your parents gave you, didn't give you chores, allowance, controlled you with money, didn't, used money to get your love and attention. I mean, there's so much around money. So it shows up in a client seemingly not interested in something that would grow their account. That's your beliefs and your emotions around money, right? I also find that people struggle with money, that gain money and lose money often, sometimes get stuck in the trap of believing that their net worth equals their self-worth. That's another trap people get into. Socially, I mean, think about it. How does money impact what you have access to, your social status, your freedom, your choices? I mean, socially, it's a really big deal. And what about spiritually? And that's where I think about it as the energy that you spoke about, where how does the way you give and receive and save and spend money, how does it make ideas and dreams you have in the world become a reality? How does the way you use money reflect what you value? So when people don't understand physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, they think they can't convince people of certain things, or they don't understand why they gain and lose money, or why someone isn't doing it the way I'm advising them to do it. Frustration and conflict can come in, but when you don't understand the intersection of these types of energies, it makes it harder to understand what's at the root of what's happening.
You talk in your book, about mental energy and loops, right? We all go through like personal loops, outside loops. Can you kind of break that down? Because I know from personal experience reading the book, I was like, oh, I'm totally going through that loop on repeat. Like gymnastics
Okay.
are not foreign to me.
Okay. So let's start with mental energy. You have approximately 70,000 thoughts per day, and 90 to 95% of them are the same as yesterday.
And isn't that the fact that, about 80% of them are like negative or something? That's the, automatic negative thoughts.
Well, a lot of them are on repeat. I would definitely agree with that. Here's the thing. You have subconscious thoughts that control things. Just like I said, I was talking to you about money. I mean, you guys are immersed in this much more than I am. And yet, I wonder if some of the things we just talked about on a physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual level are not things you think about in your day. So there's things that are subconscious and there are things that are conscious, right? So let's just say um, I invested in something and I lost my money. Let's just say, okay, hypothetical scenario. Ways we form our thoughts, okay? We pick up data from the outside world. The number was this yesterday, and now it's much lower today. Data, true? We're picking, okay. Data is also, my heart is racing, I'm flushing, my throat is constricted, okay? So that's data, physiology, my biology, more data. I'll put those together and I'll form a thought. It could be, in general, one of three ways. I'm an idiot. I didn't do my research. I shouldn't have taken so much risk. I can't believe myself. Oh my God. And I can go into that spiral. Okay. Or I could take that same data and say, you know what the problem is, Regina? Regina gave me faulty information. That was not good research. I don't think Regina is the one that I'm going to blame. That's projection. Okay. The first one was personalization. I made it about me. The next one, I just decided to make it about you. Okay. Blame, personalization. I'm projecting it onto you. Same data. And I could come to this thought. The world is falling apart. Oh my God. We are just all doomed. And I could make it bigger than me or you. That's called generalization. Okay. People tend to follow one or more of these thoughts. Women much more often go to, what did I do wrong? That's just a generalization in the research. So just noticing that the truth of any situation is often an integration of the different ways that we think. So the loops that you're talking about, let's get back to those. There are thoughts you have on repeat in the back subconscious of your mind that float through that you aren't even aware of, right? 70,000 thoughts going through your mind every day. You notice them sometimes when you're in the shower, just hot water is going and you just have a moment to exhale and you notice like, wow, I'm never going to catch up, wow, I'm not, oh, well, boy, I'm in the shower. Wow, I need to lose 10 pounds. Wow. Like you have thoughts when you're driving down the highway, just kind of cruising. Those are automatic thoughts that are just running in the back of your mind. And when you illuminate, let's say, what are some of the thoughts for all of you that are listening? What are some automatic thoughts that go on, right? If you start to write those down and you pay attention to your body as well as your mind when you're writing those down, you'll see that if your body constricts, gets tight, gets heavy, that is a thought that is giving you a net drain of energy. Now, if your thought on the other hand might have been something like, anything is possible in a world that what I thought should have happened with this investment didn't. You know what that means? That means there's possibility, there's entrepreneurship, there's a way that we could change this and do some things differently. Now, can you see how that thought just gave me energy, right? And so you have to first become aware of the ones that are on repeat. And so that's one of the things I say in the assessment. Write down your top 3 to 5 thoughts that are, pay attention inward. And as you do, you'll notice if your body's constricting, tight, and heavy, or open, relaxed, and light, you'll notice whether it's a net gain or a net drain of energy on those thoughts. So
Basically, if we looked at our inner transcripts, and just saw what we're thinking about from day to day, it wouldn't be much different. And really, probably thoughts of most of us are actually the same too.
yeah, we have a lot in common. And here's the trick. Because we are women, we were born with oxytocin in our gestation, right? That's like the tend befriend hormone. So the way I like to think about it is men, XY chromosomes, men versus XX, right? The way testosterone helps boys develop and oxytocin helps girls and women develop, it's the difference of being in a fire. Like, let's say a fire broke out in the building. Testosterone's like, get out of here, and they bolt. Women are more like, oxytocin is like, okay, does everybody have their jackets? Let's go. And there's like this stop that's like, we're doing this together. Like we have this connectedness. And it's not just women and men, because that's kind of I think that's like a false separation. Each one of us has masculine energy and feminine energy within us. The doing, getting it done, action, and the connectedness while we do it to the me, we world of that triple vision I showed you. And so I make it simple when I say men and women and things like that. The hormonal piece is true. Testosterone versus the oxytocin is true. And that's why you see some of the trends that happen. But yes, thoughts are amazing, and how we form them and how our culture gets us conditioned to believing we need to be a good girl, we need to behave politely, those types of things. In the end, they shape the thoughts that are running in our mind, and whether we'll speak up, whether we'll have conflict or not, whether we'll set healthy boundaries, whether we'll set expectations. All of that's connected.
What about thoughts are not facts? Kind of differentiating. Is
Ah.
it just a reality, or is it me spiraling out of control? I know you talk about that too in your book, of how
Sure.
we attribute.
Okay, so I talk about this more in my first book, which is called Talk RX, 5 Steps to Honest Conversations That Create Connection, Health, and Happiness. That's on Audible. That's not in print anymore. But that one is about fact versus fiction. So here's the thing. How about this, Regina? Let's take something really simple. You have a meeting with a client, okay? And it's me, okay? And it is now 7 minutes past the hour. We were supposed to meet at the top of the hour. It's now 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Here comes the thoughts in your mind. What are they? Tell me.
Have I confirmed it? Did she respond to my confirmation email? Is it the
Okay.
correct time? Did something happen?
Okay. Yeah. And give me some thoughts about me. Oh my God, she must be Indian. She must be on Indian Standard Time. They think that like 15 minutes late is like early. Okay. Like,
She's
but
bringing a relative with her, and that's why she's late.
you asking yourself questions is one thing. Okay. Double checking that the level, I call it level 5 agreements, 1 to 5, but that a level 5 agreement has been made. Oh yeah, I'm on the right day, the right place, the right Zoom link, the right time, double checking. Okay. That's all facts. Okay. Those thoughts are about details and facts. Did we confirm? The next one is about fiction, which is when you start thinking things like,
She doesn't take me seriously. She doesn't
yep,
respect me.
yep,
She's not really interested in this meeting.
that's right. Except here's what's a fact. It's usually based on, I'll try to be there. Oh, you look back at an email and it's like, oh, I'll try to be there. You see the word try and you're like, oh, she doesn't take me seriously. She didn't think, she's just going to try. So there's facts, which is what you can see, what has been confirmed, all of these things. And then there's our opinions about what that means. And those are fiction. Those are the things we're making up to make meaning of what we see, the data we see. So fact versus fiction, really important, because the way you get out of that is get curious, not furious. You get to ask me, hey, Neha, when I show up at 12:08, okay? You get to say to me, Neha, I thought we'd start today's meeting just getting an intake. We don't know each other that much. And I'd love to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to, taking what we talked about, 20% of your savings and investing it? How, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 not at all, 10 completely committed. And you can actually, when you understand these concepts, you don't drain your own energy. You then turn the idea you have in your head into reality because you ask the other person. You get curious, not furious.
Well, and a lot of those thoughts that we have on repeat, especially if we internalize the events like she doesn't take me seriously, I think things like that can lead to anxiety, right? Or potentially anger.
Yeah.
How do we deal with those things? I mean, like I said, we said money is already having kind of like an anxiety inducing energy to them for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then we add any other story we make up in our heads. Like, any thoughts on that?
All right. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a philosophical change that happened for me as a doctor. I think of all of you very similar to me as a doctor. So my job when someone comes to me is to advise them on what the data is out there, what the research shows, what my opinion is on how I think something could help them. Yes. I believe you do the same thing with your clients around advising them. Now, here's where I think the medical world gets it wrong. I have lots of ideas and thoughts, Regina, about what I think you should do with your money. Okay. And I'm going to share them with you. I'm going to give you the data. I'm going to tell you how much something's made over the last decade. I'm going to tell you what's happened in the last 6 months. And I'm going to project for you where I think we're headed. Okay. In the medical world, if I do that and you choose not to take the chemo, take the medication, do the thing, do the surgery, you know what I was taught to write in the chart? Non-compliant patient. Oh my. I find that to be quite a problem. Because you know what? There's 8 billion of us on this planet. And what I value and in what order I value it and how I prioritize how I want to be in this body. I would hope that me as their doctor would take the data and my own opinion and then get curious, not furious, about what this person values, who they are, what stage of life they're in, whether living longer matters enough to them that they'd want a tube in their stomach. You see what I mean? Like, yeah, the data can show I can continue to feed you and blah, blah, blah. But what if what gives meaning to their life is eating ice cream with their grandson? Like, what if that is really important to them? Right? So for this space, I see all of you as similar advisors to people. And you have all the data and the experience and you're helping them. But then here's the thing. What about if they don't care about saving the most money possible? What if that's not their goal, to grow that number to the biggest thing it could be, right? And so we have to come to each other in a way where we know what we know where we end and somebody else begins. We aren't trying to be right. We're actually trying to get curious, not furious, and deliver for this person what matters most to them. And that brings in the spiritual. What are their highest values and in what order do they value it?
Yeah, I love that. Get curious, not furious. I used to say, working in investment banking, I'm like, we ain't saving lives. This paperwork can't wait until tomorrow. The opposite of it, like, we're not doing, like, no one is bleeding out here, okay? Like, let's all calm down. Um, a lot of times in our industry, this anxiety and just the demand of the industry leads to hard time for us setting boundaries, social boundaries, boundaries with clients. And as much as we promise ourselves not to look at that phone or respond to that another email or work over time, we break those boundaries. Can you unpack a little bit for us, like the energy, the social energy, how that, not having boundaries drains us and really depletes us over longer term, not just the stress of the job or the market, but also the boundaries we set or don't set for ourselves.
Yeah, boundaries are huge. Okay, boundaries are huge. And I'm pulling up the deck right now as you're talking. So let me just show you. And this is another place where we can feel like we're not being a good girl, we're not being polite, society has taught us many things that maybe we're a little bit hesitant on. Hold on. Okay, I found it. Here we go. See, guys, this is what happens when you're doing like a live conversation and it's not like a direct keynote, and it takes me a little bit to get it all orchestrated here, but thank you for your patience. So drawing healthy boundaries. Sometimes people judge other people for being too blunt. You're rude. You said no. They offered you something. You said no. We have these ideas about what healthy boundaries mean and whether they're okay and whether it's okay to hurt somebody else's feelings or not. But here's something I want each of you to know. Your yes means nothing if you can't say no. When you don't say no for a long time, and then you're like, no, enough. This is what it feels like to the other person. They're like, a redwood tree just fell across, like, what is wrong with you? Because all the little times ahead of that, when you could have been saying, that doesn't feel right for me, that's not going to work, can we have a conversation about that? You ignored all of those. So then it's like, boom, it feels abrasive to other people and sometimes can end a relationship. Boundaries. I'm gonna give you a little bit on this. I think of boundaries as like a double layer winter coat. Okay. The first way you unzip this, okay, is the outer world. The outer world might try to get you to do something you don't want to do, kind of pressure you, shame you, humiliate. The outer world can push your limits. And that's the outer zipper of the boundary. Okay. But here's what I want you to know. Most people forget that there's an inner zipper. There's an inner zipper, a zipper that only you can undo and agree with them, or be offended by, or believe about yourself. Okay. And boundaries happen on a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. Anybody seeing a pattern here on energy, on boundaries, on money, on all of this stuff, right? It's a great way to do it. Physical boundaries. It can be around your physical space, what you share or don't share with people, how close is too close in a social setting, right? How affectionate you care about. Okay, physical boundaries. Whether you lend people physical money, whether you would actually do that. Mental, right? We've been talking about beliefs, what you're willing to explore, ideas. Emotional boundaries, right? What you're willing to feel, who you become when you're disappointed, devastated, worried, anxious, and then spiritual boundaries, going into the mystery. So boundaries, there's different ways we show up. It usually goes back to how you were raised, your family blueprint around boundaries. I cannot believe this, but somebody in a recent workshop said to me, yeah, my family used to throw our toothbrushes. Oh my God, I just can't even believe this. In a basket. And like, you couldn't, like, if you tried to put your own separate, they would say, like, oh, look how uptight you are. Like, you just grab the one you need. And I was like, oh my goodness. I would say that there's places where there's no boundaries. Okay. But for me, that would feel like, oh my God, no boundaries, right? The thing about that is you know this because you're a sponge. You absorb, your mood changes by the room you walk into. Your external environment is dictating how you feel inside. that is when people have less boundaries. That means flattery gets in, affection gets in, communication, but negativity also gets in. Other people, what they think about you penetrates your boundaries very quickly. Then there's people who have had some trauma, perhaps, had people smother them, perhaps, growing up. They put on a suit of armor to protect themselves so they can have the space that they need. Now, nothing gets in. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. Now, here's the problem. The good news is criticism, negativity, all of that stuff can't get in. Here's the problem. They feel alone and isolated and disconnected, right? They lose meaning and purpose. And so the goal is for you to end up with semi-permeable boundaries and a membrane that keeps in the good stuff, lets in the good stuff, and keeps out the bad stuff. So let's
What about so we got a question here on the boundaries. Like, are there cultural boundaries too?
You bet. You bet there are. Do you know so we're immigrants, and my parents came over in 1965, had an arranged marriage, came here. Had me and my three sisters in Michigan, is where we live and were born and raised. Literally, we were like, Mom, whose brother's sister's uncle is staying this weekend? Like, why do we have to clean the house? They had a philosophy that people helped us, we will help whoever needs help. So we called ourselves like the Indian Motel. We were like, I don't know whose brother's sister's aunt's uncle is showing up this weekend, but you got to clean the bathroom. And it was very loose boundaries around who could stay with us and for how long. That's a cultural thing. I talked to you about the Indian standard boundaries, Indian standard time on boundaries. People show up at weddings like an hour late, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, well you just start getting ready about that. Oh, don't we have that thing tonight? Yeah, we should probably start getting ready. So yes, and there's so many cultural boundaries, right? About like when I go to South America, the expressiveness of Latinas and like how welcome and warm they are, like that's about physical boundaries too. When you go to Europe, do you kiss people on either side? And or are you in the UK where we don't do that? We like maybe shake a hand, right? So yes, and they go across all of these levels.
Well, I can relate to the boundaries. I'm in Istanbul right now, from the US. So it's a very different culture, and I'm just like, what? You can just like tell me that you're showing up in my house 5 minutes before you show up? Like, it is week 32 in the year. Make an appointment for week 42. That's how we do it in the US. And send me, please, a link to my, Zoom or calendar invite.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
I do agree with you, learning how to say no, like from a personal experience, I had to kind of say, okay, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to over explain yourself or over deliver on why you're saying no, whether it's in a personal setting or a work setting. I think a lot of
Yeah,
us,
no's a complete sentence. Yeah,
but we
like
do.
no, that doesn't work for me. Now, I will tell you in a work setting though, it's usually helpful to help someone have some understanding of how, because in a work setting, you're navigating power and hierarchy. Someone might be paying you to do something. So no, I wouldn't take that so literally. Like the next thing someone's going to tell me is, I used your advice to say no as a complete sentence and I lost my job. You want to, there's a little bit of an art there that I think is really important. But yes, I think, culturally there are many, and if you don't know them, people will create those fictional thoughts like you're rude, you're this, you're that. Now, you may not intend any of that, but when you aren't sensitive, I went to Saudi Arabia. When I spoke there, I was quite nervous. I got off the plane and I had my head wrapped in a black scarf, right? What I found after I did that was they were willing to let me they were willing to break rules about where female speakers and men could exchange and interact. And when I asked them why, they said, well, we were a little worried when we heard you were coming in place of the man that was supposed to come. But when we saw you step off the plane with your head covered in that black scarf, we knew that it was not our job to make you part of our culture. It was our job to adjust to the culture from which you come and welcome you. So something I'd say to you is, it's not always about drawing. Boundaries aren't like that tree trunk falling like I showed you. Boundaries are about a conversation that you have with each other so that both of you understand each other and can feel comfortable and can adjust and are aware of each other's preferences and synergies and gifts and styles. And together, if you can really see that you are much stronger together, then it doesn't have to be that hard fall of a conversation where no is the boundary. Our world is trying to make things pretty black and white. And I think and sometimes it is black and white. But I would say to you much earlier, it's about a conversation. Boundaries are about having a conversation.
Enforcing the boundaries, in a relationship, for example, we got a question here. Any tips on how to navigate boundaries in a relationship when you didn't have as much before and you don't want to kill the relationship? So I'm assuming that
Okay. Any
talking
tips on how to navigate boundaries in a
Yeah.
relationship when you didn't have as much before and you don't want to kill the relationship? Do you mean have as much money? Do you mean, I'm not sure what you didn't have as much before means.
as many boundaries, I guess, before, and you're now
Yeah,
trying
sorry, that was my question. Sorry to
Sure.
break protocol and go off mute. You actually kind of answered it. What I was meaning is like if you have a relationship, so I'm actually thinking of my mother-in-law, not to get too personal, but right, you're coming into the family, you're just kind of trying to please, not ruffle feathers. Okay, now you're married, now you're starting your own family, you're wanting to set some boundaries.
Yeah.
But then like I've done that and then it was like a tree trunk falling down. So that's where I was just trying to figure out like how do you more gracefully go into that? But I think you already answered that in that it's about having a conversation and not just like almost surprising them.
Yeah, Christina,
Yeah.
because see, there's many pieces to this. The first one is how your physiology told you have different values around this than they do. The second one is the thoughts you had about needing to be a good daughter-in-law. The third one is, oh my gosh, like I am now part of the system that if I pull on something, it's kind of like a baby's mobile or a spider web. Like one thing moves it and like everything moves. It's all connected. What I'd say that's the most important about this conversation is that you get curious, not furious. That you build trust with who it is you're speaking with, your mother-in-law, and don't worry about being personal. I think in the world right now, if we don't say what we mean, if we don't, you said, I don't want to break protocol. What I want you to know is I think we're in unprecedented times. And it took a pandemic for us to realize that there weren't boundaries between work and home. Home was work. And our lives, and you get to see a corner of my life, right? It's really about the things you say that are personal. I'm sure there are people who are listening who are going to get great benefit by this. And I'd say in that conversation, the most important thing is to unhook, know what your body map is telling you about how you feel about this, know what you value about that money conversation, what's most important about it. And then when you're moving into the conversation with your mother-in-law, ask her what's important. I noticed you guys bought a second home. What was the most important part about that for, your husband growing up or your family growing up? So she's going to tell you, I'm making this up, right? I'm totally making this up. She's going to tell you whatever it is. Don't listen to the words only that she's saying. Pay attention to the emotion with which she tells it to you and what she values about it. Wow, I'm really curious about XYZ. And in that space, you build the relationship, you build the trust, you build the connection, and you understand her better. Now you get to say, I value, shared experiences between the siblings also. I think my siblings, and I are strong even to today. And, something that is becoming really important to me that I'm noticing is XYZ. And you introduce what you value. But you don't do that before you've listened to what's important to someone else, before you've reflected back, not just their words or argued against their words, but really heard what they value. Then you share, what you value, etc. Okay, let's say it doesn't go well. Let's say she's like, nope, no gifts like that. Nope, can't do that, whatever it is. I want to give you a phrase that allows you to hold your own boundary and not get into a cat fight with somebody else. Okay, it goes like this. Wow, it sounds like if you and I were given the same choices or options, we would make a different choice. Or it sounds like given these, parameters or this information, it sounds like you and I would make a different choice. You see how I didn't make her wrong? I didn't try to one up her. It's a realization at some point, oh, I think what you thought happened over there was different than my perspective. Do you see how that's a bridge? There, instead of alienating someone who is your family, there will be big consequences around how you communicate there, not only for you, but for your, partner and for the kids, if there are any, and all of it.
Excellent. Thank you.
You
I feel
bet.
like that's also a good bridge in a professional setting, right? To acknowledge that this is one situation, but we both have two different opinions on it, and maybe see if we can find something, the middle ground, right? Without
It could be the middle
alienating.
ground, but where you want to start is really validating and listening deeper than the words for someone's emotion and values, so they feel heard. Because once someone feels heard, they soften. And when they soften, they're open to hearing an expanded perspective, but not while they feel like their point isn't being heard, it isn't being validated, it isn't. Then they go into a protective, constricted place in your body map, that throat constriction, stomach turning, flushing, all of that. So I'm wondering if you guys think it's okay. Lauren, would you please let's give them an assessment. This is something free and optional for you. An assessment to figure out where you are on your physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual energy, net gain, net drain, and the audiobook of how you navigate your body map. Because that's would that be okay, Regina, if we give that to them?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, let me see if I can find it in that deck too. Hold on. All right, and I'll share that. I think there's a link, and then there's if I can find one down here, it is. It's a QR code, the one that I have.
All right, so Lauren just threw it in the chat too.
And you can either take a picture of this or whatever feels right. Was there any other questions? Let me see. I'll look in the chat to see.
Neha, I think there was one earlier where they were asking, this is not related to boundaries, but they've been living with an anxiety disorder for the last 25 years and have been on benzodiazepine.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's leading to muscle spasms, breathlessness, things like that. So how do you suggest how they could maybe reduce that and kind of, help monitor their symptoms with that?
Okay, now I wish I could have done the 5 steps to healing anxiety. But what I would do is, Lauren, could you please put in the chat the link to so TalkRx chapter 15 is The Sky Is Not Falling. And we have a link to some videos of me live with clients walking through the tool I will not get the chance to do with you live, but you will get to see me doing it with other people who bravely asked that question around the world and were willing to be videotaped so that you can benefit. So Lauren, put that anxiety link in there.
Okay.
They now have the resource that chapter 15 of TalkRx will walk them through this as well. And if you're still struggling and you're not getting what you need, reach out to my team and I will give you a complimentary 20 minutes on that. Okay. Sorry, we didn't get to do that a little sooner.
It's no worries. I know we had quite a few questions. I will take one more question before we wrap up. Anyone, if you want to raise a hand and ask a question or put one in the chat. I know we're right kind of on time here.
Oh, I see. How to deal with someone with rigid boundaries if that person is your boss. Okay. Um, well, I think what I'd say, Jen, is rigid boundaries come from a couple places. It comes from having different work styles and feeling threatened by something not getting done or whatever you're afraid of. So I'll give you an example, okay? You met Lauren here, you met me. A one work style. There's the doer, who's the accomplishment person, tasks, get it done. There's the thinker, who is the person who solves complex problems, moves slower but methodical. There's the seer, who's me, which is like the innovator. I'm not your regular doctor. I'm not your regular engineer, right? I'm sure you can tell that by now. I'm the innovator and want like ideas and possibilities. I'm nonlinear. Like when she said I'm not following protocol, I thought to myself, I'm not sure what protocol is, and I'm sure I've broken it, right? So like that's the seer, right? Like the innovator. The fourth one is the feeler. That's the relationship, glue of the team. I am more the seer feeler. Lauren is more the thinker doer. Okay. So Lauren, I'm not going to say these are your fears, but I'm just going to talk generally. Typically, doers and thinkers are afraid of a couple things: vulnerability, losing control, and looking foolish. Me, as a seer, I'm like, possibility, possibility, let's go. Who cares, right? I'm not worried about looking foolish. You know what I'm worried about? Feeling trapped. Me having to like be confined. I'm like, oh no, the opposite, right? And feeler, because of the feeler in me, I'm worried about being rejected. So what happens when you think your boss has rigid boundaries or somebody in the world? First of all, I want you to ask yourself the question, who does this remind me of? And if it's your boss, it's going to be one of your caretakers, your parents, someone from your younger life. Who does this remind me of? Well, how is this familiar? And then I want you to ask yourself, might they have a different work style than I do? And this is getting curious, not furious. This is building trust with your boss. This is learning how to do a take two, communicate better in conflict, doing the listening at the values level that I talked earlier to Christina about. So it's an integration of that. So
Super helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time
you
to
bet.
elaborate.
Yeah, well, thank you for spending your hour, with us. When you make it this important in a world this busy, I hope you all really got what you needed today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, Neha, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending your hour with us and taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to talk to folks. I know they got a lot of helpful information out of this session. Folks, don't forget to follow Neha on social media. We hope to see you soon back here with us. And thanks again for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge.
Do you mind if I just tell them a way that they could connect to me if they're interested?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Fire-
well, I just started this thing. It's kind of an experiment, really. But once a month, I'm realizing people aren't getting the answers that they need from their doctors, from their coaches, from their therapists, like whatever it is. So many of them on the road while I was launching the book asked me to create something for the public. Lauren, will you also put in for them the Conference for Women's Mental Health study that shows what women in the workforce are willing to do and not willing to do around their own mental health? So I started a public once a month, twice a month. It's called Sacred Exchange. And it's a place we come together and do what we did here. And people can sign up for that and do it. It's nehasangwan.com/sacred-exchange. So we'll drop that in for you guys. And If you want to continue it in a more live way, certainly social media. If you want to continue the conversation online, let's do that as well. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Neha. Well, folks, feel free to follow Collaborative WIM. We will post a replay of this event for anyone who wants to rewatch. And please join us for our future events. Our Q2 will be coming up here in May. It's on our website, and follow us on LinkedIn and other social media. And I'm wishing everyone a good rest of the week, and don't burn out, okay? Stay,
Know what I
stay, stay strong, say no. You
Well,
are saving lives, but you really ain't, okay?
Oh, but you know, Regina, what I'd tell you is you are saving lives. And let me tell you why. Stress causes or exacerbates more than 80% of all illness. And if 70% of the US who are surveyed are saying it's their top cause of stress, I get them when they're having a heart attack, a stroke, or a pneumonia, which was the end result of that. So you and I were actually partners in the continuum of when this happens. And so what I'd say is it is really important how we engage every day with every person. And the thing that I'd just say it really does matter. And we're all having what I call a sacred exchange. Like there's broken exchanges, dysfunctional exchanges, transactional exchanges, relational exchanges, and then there's sacred exchanges. And when Christina said, I hope I'm not being too personal or whatever, what I felt in that moment was a sacred exchange. Like, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being real. Thank you for being you and helping not just yourself, but other people. I think we need more of them. And I think you guys are doing amazing work. You guys ever want to do something together? You want to do something longer and go through all of this? I'm game. So
Thank you, Neha. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you so
take care,
much.
everybody. Take care.
Thanks, folks.